it's the War Hipster here, and we are painting the Primaris Captain from Indomitus in the colours of the mighty Blood Angels. I'm so excited to paint this miniature. I've been waiting for it for ages, and it's finally here. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick off with the armour, and the colour we're going to be using is Blood Angels Red. And what we want to do is we don't want to use loads of this at once. We just want to use kind of a sort of a small amount. We want to paint in these kind of even, calm and considered brush strokes, like I'm doing here. You always want to go in the same direction where possible. So be that left to right or up and down. You never want to kind of cross the streams, as it were, because that's how you can disturb the skin of the paint. And that's how it ends up getting all kind of streaky and weird and blotchy. So as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm just being very careful as I do this. Always trying to go in the same direction across the entire panel. Now it is important to take it a panel at a time. Don't rush this, because we want a nice smooth coat. And with that Blood Angels Red all applied, we're now going to add a little bit of extra shading to the red armour. Now, I was asked recently on YouTube by Martin Easterman if using some Flesh Tearers Red as a recess shade would make that red armour pop even more. And having just tested this myself on an Assault Intercessor, it really does work. So what we want to do is we want to take a small amount of Flesh Tearers Red, like this. And there's not a lot of opportunity on this guy to do it, because lots of it is covered in kind of extra details. But what we're going to do is take the small amount of Flesh Tearers Red on a small layer brush. We just want to run this Flesh Tearers Red into all of the recesses around the model. It just makes the lighter red of the flat panels just pop that little bit more. Demonstrate it again down here on this little recess area. Just grab a little bit of that Flesh Tearers Red and just running it in. Like so. It's only probably worth doing this on like characters, just to take them that one step further. But also, like, if you make any kind of weird mistakes, like for example here in the mold where there's not really a distinction between the lines, you just use a little bit of Flesh Tearers Red like this to establish that gap between the two, like that. And it dries a lot paler than it looks when it initially goes on there wet. So you will want to take your time doing this bit. And with that Flesh Tearers Red applied to those recesses, we've now got some really kind of nicely shaded red armour. Now what we're going to do, before we highlight any of the armour, we're just going to colour in a lot more of the base coat. So that way we can kind of do most of the highlights in one big fell swoop. So the next place to focus on is the black robe. And it's going to be black because he's a Blood Angel, rather than the kind of cream that you see on like the Ultramarines, etc. However, that's a nice segue. What we're going to do to colour in this black robe, we're going to use some Ultramarines Blue. And what we want to do is we want to take a small amount of this on our brush. Then we just want to paint in these kind of big, broad brush strokes, very carefully. Just being very calm and considered as we do it, to get a nice, smooth finish across these robes. This is just for the robes. We're not going to do this on any of the other black details. The other black details we're going to do slightly different. And with all that Ultramarines Blue applied, we're now going to apply some black Templar. And what we want to do is we're going to take a small amount on our brush. I'm using a medium layer brush here. And we want to effectively paint this all over, but only in the recesses, just leaving the sharp edges of the fabric shining through with that Ultramarines Blue, like this. So effectively just like kind of, it's like a recess shade in a way, but just much bigger. You can see like that. I then do it again on the other side. As you can see, what we've left, it's just this really lovely little Ultramarines Blue highlight there. Similarly again, down here, just want to add this Black Templar in that recess like that. And over here. And next up, once that Black Templar is dry, we're going to take some thinned down Russ Grey. And we're just going to apply this to all of those highlights that we've added, well, that we've left with the Ultramarines Blue, just to strengthen them up a bit. You don't want to do the whole highlight, just kind of about 3/4 of it. To give you that transition from the dark Ultramarines Blue highlight to the Russ Grey, and then to the final highlight, which we're going to apply after this. And once that Russ Grey has been added, we're going to take a small amount of Fenrisian Grey, and we're just going to add this to the sharpest points of these highlights, like that, just to give it that impression of the light catching on the raised areas. Of this fabric. And with that Fenrisian Grey applied, what we want to do is we want to create a roughly 6 parts contrast medium to 1 part Leviadon Blue mix. And we want to add this as a glaze all over the top of these highlights and the robe, just to tie the Ultramarines Blue, the Fenrisian Grey and the Russ Grey all together, as well as that Black Templar. Just give it a little bit of a blue sheen. And with that Leviadon Blue contrast medium glaze applied to the cloak, we've got this lovely shimmering shiny black linen. So what we're going to do is we're going to now move on and paint some of the other details, and we're going to start with the black. Not that we haven't already started with the black, but what we're going to do is we're going to use some Black Templar straight out the pot, neat, and we're going to use this on areas such as the Aquila and the soft joints of his armour. Don't worry too much about the shield for now, because we are going to be doing the interior of the shield with this colour, and possibly the exterior, I haven't decided yet, but we're going to do them slightly different when we do. So we're just taking it in different stages with this black at the moment, and when painting in the Aquila, what we want to do is we want to try and leave the iron halo that you can see around here. Doesn't matter too much if you get some black on it though, because we are going to cover over it with gold. And with that done, we're now going to paint in the leather details using some Cygor Brown. Now, leather details are really, on this guy, just his belt. And you want to work it into those belt loops that you've got there. There's a couple on the side and in here as well. Just make sure you get this Cygor Brown in there, because otherwise it'll dry and there'll be a nice little bright grey sear spot. So you've got the belt, and we've got the holster on his back here. And with that done, we're now going to paint in the paper parts. Now, as I said before, don't worry too much about the shield. We're treating that kind of as a separate miniature, because, well, he's holding it so far away from his body that we don't need to kind of worry about doing it just yet. And really, there's a lot going on in here that we want to be slightly different to what the model is. So we're just going to do all the paper parts on the captain himself. And the colour we're going to be using is Skeleton Horde. And we want to work this paint all over all of these purity seals, the bit of paper that's attached to his right hand shoulder pad, and next up we're going to paint in all the gold details using some thinned down Retributor Armour. Now what we want to do is we want to just pick out areas such as the shoulder trim, his helmet, the iron halo, any of the kind of remaining like skulls and halos and stuff that are scattered around and that we haven't done, like the one here on his back and on the gun holster there, the pommel and the hilt of the sword, this part on his arm. Yeah, there's lots. Once again, we're just leaving that shield for now because we are going to paint that as a kind of separate entity to our captain. We just want to be very careful as we do this because we don't want to get any of this gold on any of that lovely red. And next up, with all that gold applied, we're now going to take some thinned down Iron Warriors. I'm going to use this to paint in all the remaining silver details. This includes areas like the belt buckle, the chains around his waist and over his wrist, this little device here, the vents on his backpack, and of course the sword blade. And with all of those metallics done, we're now going to shade all of the gold. And so what we're going to do is going to create a mix of 6 parts contrast medium, 1 part Basilicanum Grey, and 2 parts Guilliman Flesh. And we're going to use this, as I say, all over those gold details. And we just want to get this all over all of this gold, like this. Just want to be a little bit careful now, going around that face. But if we do splodge on it, we can always neaten it back up with some grace here. And with that contrast medium Guilliman Flesh and Basilicanum Grey mix applied, we're now just going to shade down the silver using some Basilicanum Grey on its own. And next up, we're going to use a small amount of Magos Purple, and this is for the wax seals on the purity seals. And next up, we want to use some Volupus Pink, and this is going to be for the soft grip on the power sword. Listen to that rain. And next up, we want to use a small amount of Guilliman Flesh, not very much at all. And this is going to be for his skin. You can just see on either side of where his helmet lenses would normally be, over his eyes. And with that done, we've now got all of our base coats on the Primaris Captain himself. Like I said, we're just leaving the shield and the base for now. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some highlights now, and we're going to start with some Liberator Gold for all of the gold edges. And with that Liberator Gold applied, we've got some lovely bright gold going on now. So what we're going to do is going to highlight all the silver, and this colour we're going to be using is Iron Hand Steel. So much the same as what we just did with the gold. We just want to use this steel to pick out all the edges on all the silver details. And with that Iron Hand Steel applied to all that silver, you can see we've got these lovely kind of sharp edges, particularly on that sword. So what we're going to do, just to finish off all of the metallics, we're going to take a small amount of Stormhost Silver, and we just want to apply this to the absolute sharpest areas of all of these metallic sections. So silver and the gold. Just want to, like I said, we're just picking out all of the corners and the sharpest areas, just to kind of really bring it to life. With those metallics all nice and highlighted, what we're going to do now is move on and highlight the brown leather details. And the colour we're going to be using for this is Mournfang Brown. And much like we've done so far with the metallics, we just want to pick out the edges of all of these leather details that we originally painted with the Cygor Brown. And with that Mournfang Brown applied to those leather details, we're now going to highlight all of the bone and parchment. And the colour we're going to be using for this is Wraithbone. And with that Wraithbone applied, we're now going to highlight all of the black details using some Administratum Grey. So we want to just catch areas like the edges on all of these skulls. And on the Aquila. With those black details highlighted, we now want to just quickly paint in this little vial under here. Now the colours we're going to be using are Gryph Hound Orange and Flesh Tearers Red. And what we want to do is we want to take the Flesh Tearers Red, not Flesh Tearers Red, the Gryph Hound Orange. We use Gryph Hound Orange first, and we want to just paint this all over like this, just avoiding that gold casing. Like that. And then give the brush a quick wash. And we grab a small amount of Flesh Tearers Red. And whilst it's still wet, we just want to add this to the bottom of that vial. Like this. To create that kind of transition between the orange and the red. And if you want to smooth it out a little bit, you just grab a little bit of Gryph Hound Orange, not very much, and you just use it to move the two colours together. And with that vial all done, can't really see it like that, there we go. It's still drying, but we're not going to be focusing on that area for now because we're actually now going to work on the face. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a small amount of Flayed One Flesh, and what we want to do is on his face, we just want to pick out the sharpest areas. There is just like here on his cheekbone. Just being really careful now. I'm going to take the top of his eye and the bottom of his eyelid. And with that Flayed One Flesh applied, what we want to do is we want to take a really small amount of wildwood. Not very much at all. And we want to just apply this to the underside of his eyelid. And next up, we want to use a small amount of Wraithbone, a little dot, to colour in the white of his eye. With that Wraithbone applied, we now want to use a tiny amount of Black Templar to add the pupil. And with that done, it's now time to move on. And we are going to paint this shield, not this one just yet. Again, we're just waiting to do that one. So, what we're going to do with this shield is we are going to do some freehand, I'm afraid. So, what we want to do is we want to, around about 3/4 of the way down. So around about here, we want to draw a straight line going across with Blood Angels Red. Just make contact with the model, just very carefully. Draw a straight line going all the way across like that. And then what we want to do is block in the rest of the shield. And next up, once that Blood Angels Red is dry, we want to take some thinned down Yriel Yellow. And we want to start drawing in some grid lines to form some checkered boxes. So what we want to do is we want to, firstly in the top right corner here, we want to draw a straight line going down. About halfway. To around about there. And then we want to draw a straight line going across like that, so it's in line with the top of that curve. And then similarly, we want to draw another straight line going across here. And then we want to draw a straight line. I know I haven't joined it up, but we want to draw a straight line going along down here. Going down like that to where the red and the white meet. And now what we want to do is, once again with the Yriel Yellow, is we want to draw a couple of lines to form a grid in this corner, and similarly up here we want to draw 2 lines going across like that. It's nerve-wracking stuff, this. And then next up, we want to draw some lines going across like so. And then what you want to do is you want to block in the colours, the squares I should say, that you want to be yellow. So you want to alternate it. So you want to go 2, 1, 2 or 1, 2, 1. It's really up to you. And once that's done, we want to use a small amount of Evil Sunz Scarlet. And this is basically just to highlight the red squares, but also to just get rid of those yellow lines that we're no longer using. So like the one there, and there's one along here. And next up, with that yellow check pattern added, we're now going to add a little bit more freehand to this box here, and to this box up here, and to this box down here. Now realistically you can do whatever you like here, but what we're going to do is we're going to use some black Templar, and in this bottom right corner here we're going to draw a little teardrop. Like this. In the top right hand corner, top left hand corner I should say, we're going to draw a little aquila. We can do this by drawing a line to the left, a line to the right, leaving a little bit of a gap in between. And then we just use lots of little brush strokes to add in the feathers and the body of the eagle. And with that done, we now want to use some Apothecary White to just give this bottom half of the shield some shade. It wants to be a nice smooth coat, so we just want to pull off any of the excess. We don't want it to be too dark. And next up, once again with the black Templar, what we want to do is we want to take a small amount on our brush, and we want to draw a semicircle going across the middle, and then a little halo. So basically we're drawing the captain's halo. So you want to just very carefully, with a small amount of this black Templar, we'll start around about halfway and end about halfway here. And we just want to draw this semicircle like that. And with that done, all that's left to do now is to highlight the white areas of the shield and the red areas of the shield, but we'll do the red areas when we do the rest of the red armor, which is coming up next. But what we're doing is we're using some Corax White here just to highlight the edges on the shield. And with that done, it's now time to highlight all of the red, including all of the red armor. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some thinned down Fire Dragon Bright. I'm going to use this to highlight the red armour, as well as the red sections on that shield that we've just done. Just the outside edges, you don't need to do all the interior ones because we've already done that with the Evil Sunz Scarlet. However, when we're doing the actual armour itself, what we want to do is we want to pick out all of the areas like the rivets, like this. We also want to just pick out the sharpest areas of each of the armour plates. And with all of that done, well, the Primaris Captain himself is pretty much finished. All we need to do is we need to do some script work and maybe add a little bit of a glow to the blade, but we're not going to do that now. Now we're going to finally work on that shield. And the place we're going to start is on the inside of the shield, so in here. And the colour we're going to be using is Basilicanum Grey, because we want the inside of the shield to be black. But we want it to be a really nice deep black. So what we want to do is we want to get a good coating of Basilicanum Grey all over the flat inside of the shield, just being careful around that hand. And with that Basilicanum Grey applied, we want to take some black Templar and we want to give this a coat all over the top of that Basilicanum Grey. And with that black Templar applied, we're now going to do all of the gold details. So this is going to be using some Retributor Armour. And what we want to do is we want to get this all over the trim of the shield, like this. We also want to do the big iron halo here. And we want to do this area as well. Just trying to avoid getting any on that grace here for now. We also want to work this right in there underneath the skull's head, like this. We also want to add a little bit of this to the casing on the hourglass that the skeleton is holding. And with all that Retributor Armour applied, we now want to apply a little bit of shading. So the first bit we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of wildwood, not very much. And we want to do this just on the base plate here. Not on the main iron halo. You just want to do it on this bit down here. Like this. It's a little bit fiddly. So just take your time. And if you get any of this wildwood on the iron halo, it doesn't really matter at this stage because you can just use a bit of Retributor Armour to brighten it back up. And with that wildwood applied, we're now going to create a roughly 5 parts contrast medium to 1 part wildwood mix to create this really thin brown. And we're going to use this all over the bones of the skeleton. And with that wildwood mix applied to the bones, you can see we've now got these lovely weathered Space Marine corpse. So what we're going to do now is we're going to paint in all of the paper, and the colour we're going to be using is Skeleton Horde. And with that Skeleton Horde applied, we're now going to use some thinned down Iron Warriors. And this is for all the silver details. So you've got the various little armour plugs around the skeleton. You've got the little chain holding up the hourglass. And you've got the interior workings. And with that Iron Warriors applied, we want to use a small amount of Magos Purple, and this is for the wax seals on those purity seals. And with that Magos Purple applied, we're going to take some Volupus Pink, and we're going to use this on all of the cable ties, tying the skeleton to the shield. There's one there. There's a couple on the arms. There's a couple on the legs. But we're also going to use the Volupus Pink for the soft grip in here on the shield. And with that done, it's now time to add some shading to all of the gold. And we're once again going to create a 6 parts contrast medium, 2 parts Guilliman Flesh, and 1 part Basilicanum Grey mix. We're going to grab some of this on our brush, and then we're just going to start shading in all of that gold. And we just want to take a bit of care now to make sure that we run it into that recess, but that we don't like completely blob it all over that grey cere. But as per usual, if you do that, you can at this stage just use a little bit of grey cere to neaten it back up. And with that done, we're going to add some Basilicanum Grey to all of the silver. And with all that done, it's now time to highlight these gold details using some Liberator Gold. You just want to pick out all of the sharp edges. And with that Liberator Gold applied, we're going to just finish off all that gold by using a small amount of Canoptek Alloy. I'm going to use this just to add a little spot highlight to the sharp corners on the shield like this. And next up, we're going to highlight all of the silver with some Iron Hand Steel. And with all that silver highlighted, we're now going to add some Wraithbone highlights to all of the bone and to all of the parchment. So we're just picking out the sharp areas on the bone, like this. And with all that done, we're now going to add some Apothecary White to the white area of the shield. Like this. Don't want to use very much of this as we do it. Just want to take it in small increments. And with that Apothecary White applied, we're now going to highlight the white area of the shield by using some Corax White. What we want to do is we want to pick out the rivets, like this, as well as the kind of inside edge. And with that Corax White applied, what we're going to do is going to take some Aethermatic Blue, and we're going to apply this to both sections of that hourglass. And with that Aethermatic Blue applied, what we want to do is take a small amount of Skeleton Horde, not very much, and we just want to stipple it on to the bottom half of the bottom hourglass section, just to represent the sand. And next up, what we're going to do is we're going to take this miniature even further by grabbing a little bit of Corax White, and we just want to, do a little bit of a highlight down each side of the hourglass. So just down here with this Corax White, and down here as well, and similarly on the bottom, like this, just to give it a little bit more of a shine. Additionally, what we want to do is we want to take this Corax White, and on the sword blade we want to highlight the bottom side of this power node and the top side. You might have to build this up a little bit just to make sure that it's definitely white. And then similarly around the nodes, so you want to do the same thing on the inside. we want to draw some little lightning bolts sparking off like this. So you can see it like there, like that. And additionally, we want to do the same thing on the power nodes on the inside of the shield. Like that. And we want to use a little bit of this inside the eyes and the nose of the skull. Like this. And so next up, what we want to do is we want to grab some Talassar Blue, and we now want to go over all of those white bits that we added. So inside the eyes, we want to add this Talassar Blue like this. And inside the nose. Like that. Similarly, on the power nodes on the inside, we want to add this Talassar Blue over those white highlights that we did, as well as around the base of the nodes, like so. And on the sword blade, we want to cover that top node in this Talassar Blue, like so. And then we just want to go over our little lightning bolt lines that we've done, and then colour in around the base of the node on the actual flat of the blade. And with that Talassar Blue applied, the last thing to do for these glowing bits is to use a small amount of blue horror just to highlight those power nodes like that. Once again, effectively just replacing the Corax White. And with that blue energy glaze on the sword and on the shield all done, well, the captain is pretty much finished, and you could leave it there, apart from the base, of course. However, we're not going to leave it there. What we are going to do is we are just going to add some text to all of these hanging paper bits. Now, I'm not going to show all of it because there's a lot to do, and really the choice is up to you, but the colours we are going to be using is Blood Angels Red, Cygor Brown, and Black Templar. We're going to be using them kind of differently in different places. So what we're going to do kind of is we want to just mix and match it, really. So on any of these kind of trailing bits, we want to use some like Cygor Brown just to add some trailing text like this, using small amounts at a time. That's too much. Using small amounts of time with a small brush, we're just going to draw some small lines going like this across these bits of parchment. What we're also going to do is, just to change it up a little bit every now and then, is use something like Blood Angels Red just to add in a little bit of different text here and there. Just add a little bit of variation. So there we go, we've got 2 lines of Blood Angels Red there. Just going to wash the brush again and go back to Cygor Brown. Like that. And we want to continue that all the way down that piece of paper. What we can also do is we can also use the Black Templar to draw in some little freehand symbols every now and then. So like for at the bottom, example at the bottom here, I want to draw a small little teardrop using the Black Templar, like that. And you just want to go over doing this however you like. Yeah, if you want to, you can also follow kind of some of the stuff that's on the instructions. You can see they've got Honor written on the shoulder pad, and they've got the Ultramarine symbol there. You could replace that with the Blood Angels symbol. You could write the, you know, the checkered pattern. You could do whatever you like. So really, it's up to you. So yeah, have fun. And with all of that script work added to the shield and all the purity seals and all the parchment, we have now finished the Primaris Captain. So the next thing to work on is the base. And what we're going to do is I'm going to try and make him match as close as I can to my traditional colour scheme. But you can paint this any way you want. But if you want to follow along, you absolutely can. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint in the stonework here first. We just want to get this out of the way because it's the biggest area. And we're going to be using two colours. We're going to be using Basilicanum Grey and Black Templar. And what we want to kind of do is we want to, whilst it's kind of drying and wet, we just basically kind of want to alternate the colours to give us these kind of two different kind of textured stones. So we're going to start with the Black Templar, and we're going to get this all over the section that we want to be just black straight out of the pot, because we're after that kind of that grey that we get when we use Black Templar straight out of the pot, rather than kind of doing a pre-shade or whatever, because we don't want this to be like black stone. We just want it to be a very dark grey, like I'm doing here. So we just, I think I'm going to do all of this back panel like this. Make sure that we get in around that, just being careful around that cloak. Oh, it's a nice awkward little bit to get to. There we go. And with that Black Templar applied, I'm going to wash my brush quickly. And then I'm going to grab some Basilicanum Grey. And just where it kind of starts with the Black Templar, I'm just going to blend the two together by just moving that Basilicanum Grey out and across the Black Templar. And with that rock all coloured in, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take some wildwood. I'm going to paint this all over the soil. Like this. And with that wildwood applied, we're now going to use some thinned down Iron Warriors. And this is to coat in all of the black and all the silver parts on the Necron Warrior. Down here. So areas that are silver, areas like the shoulder pads. And the areas that are going to be black are areas like the spinal column, the joints, and this cartouche here. And with that Iron Warriors applied, what we want to do is we want to take some Black Templar and we want to coat this over all of the areas on that Necron Warrior that we want to be black. So this is areas like his joints, and like his spinal column in here, and the cartouche. And with that Black Templar applied, we now want to take some thinned down Runelord Brass. We want to coat this all over the Necron Warrior's armour. Like this. We can also use this Runelord Brass to just pick out any of the spent bolt casings that you can see. There's a couple of them around the model. There's one down here. And next up, with all that Runelord Brass applied, we're going to create a roughly 6 parts contrast medium, 1 part Agaros Dunes, and 1 part Wildwood mix. And this is to shade all of that bronze that we just added. I keep saying bronze, it's brass, it's Runelord Brass. I do apologise. Anyway, just want to use this mix all over like this, just to darken it down and give it that really weather-worn look. And once that contrast medium Agaros Dunes and Wildwood mix is dry, we're going to use a small amount of Basilicanum Grey just to shade the remaining silver details on the Necron Warrior down here and across his shoulder pads. And next up, we want to highlight all of this brassy bronze area with some Canoptek Alloy. With that Canoptek Alloy applied to the bronze, brass, whatever colour it is, we're going to use some Iron Hand Steel to highlight all of the silver as well as all of the black. And with that Iron Hand Steel applied, we want to take some Tesseract Glow and we want to apply this to his eyes. And with that Tesseract Glow dry, what we want to do is we want to take some Tyrant Skull and we want to gently dry brush this all over those rocks and the soil. We just want to be very careful as we do this so as not to get this Tyrant Skull all over the model. And with that dry brush applied, as you can see, the base is very nearly finished. So all we're going to do, just to tie it in with the rest of the Blood Angels that we've already done, is we're going to add a little bit of Valhallan Blizzard. In just little patches. And with that Valhallan Blizzard applied, all that's left to do is to paint in the rim of the base. And I'm going to be using some thinned down Corvus Black for this. And there you have it, the Indomitus Primaris Captain all finished up in the colours of the Blood Angels, ready to lead his noble brothers against the foes of humanity. I adore this miniature, and it's packed full of detail, and yes, it takes a little bit of extra effort to bring it all up, but I think it's absolutely worth it in the end, particularly for such a centerpiece model. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I'll see you very soon in the next one.